Look up. There's a roof over your head, a door that locks, a city humming somewhere beyond your window, full of roads and shops and strangers you will never meet. You think this is normal. You think this is just how humans live. But the real answer is far stranger. For almost the entire span of human existence, none of this existed. No cities, no farms, no houses with locks, no kings, no money, no towns with names. Your ancestors lived in small, wandering bands, sleeping under open sky or inside cold stone caves, following animals across the land season after season. And they did this not for a few centuries, but for hundreds of thousands of years. Anatomically modern humans, people with essentially the same bodies and brains as ours, have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Civilization, the whole thing, cities and writing and farming and everything you call ordinary life, is barely 12,000 years old. Let that sink in. If you squeeze the entire human story into a single 24-hour day, civilization would not appear until around 11:15 at night. Every pharaoh, every empire, every war in your school books happens in the last 45 minutes. The other 23 hours? People walking, hunting, gathering, and sleeping under the stars. So what happened? Why did humans spend almost their entire existence as wandering hunters, and then, in a sudden burst near the very end, build a completely different world? The story begins with ice. For most of the last 100,000 years, the Earth was locked in an ice age. Not a frozen wasteland stretching pole to pole, but a colder, wilder, far less predictable planet than the one you know. Sea levels were lower, deserts were larger, and the climate lurched violently, warming and cooling in swings that could reshape an entire landscape within a single human lifetime. Now try to imagine farming in a world like that. It's almost impossible. You cannot plant seeds in spring and patiently wait months for a harvest when you have no idea whether next year brings gentle rain, crushing drought, or a returning wall of glacial cold. In an unstable world, staying on the move is not primitive. It is the intelligent choice. When the herd moves, you move with it. When the berries here run out, you walk to where they still grow. Your ancestors were not sitting around waiting to invent farming. Farming was simply a terrible idea for the world they actually lived in. Then, about 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age ended. The planet warmed. And here is the part that truly matters.
It didn't just warm, it steadied. The wild, whipsawing climate calmed into something the Earth had not offered in a very long time. A long, unbroken stretch of warm, stable, predictable weather. Geologists call this new period the Holocene, and here is a strange thought. It is the only world your civilization has ever known. You are living inside it as you listen. Suddenly the world made a different kind of sense. Rain came roughly when you expected it. The seasons behaved. The same patch of hillside that gave you wild grain this year would very likely give it again next year, and the year after that. And that one change, predictability, changed everything. Picture a hillside in the Middle East, in a region archaeologists call the Fertile Crescent, an arc of rich land curving through what is now Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Wild wheat and wild barley grew thick across these hills. Your ancestors had already been gathering these grains for thousands of years, picking the seeds by hand, grinding them between stones. But gathering wild grain is not farming. Now something new was quietly possible. If you dropped some of those seeds in the soil near your camp, they grew. If you came back the next season, they were still there, waiting. And if you saved the biggest, plumpest grains and planted only those, the next crop came in a little bigger, a little better than the last. This was not a single flash of genius. Nobody woke up one morning and announced, "Today, we begin farming." It happened slowly, across dozens upon dozens of generations, so gradually that no single person alive could ever have noticed the shift. A little more tending here, a little more planting there. Until one day, without anyone ever deciding it, humans had simply become farmers. The archaeologist Gordon Childe gave this transformation its famous name, the Neolithic Revolution.
though many archaeologists today see it less as a sudden revolution and more as a slow, rising tide. And here is where the story takes a genuinely surprising turn. Because farming, the very thing we credit for lifting humanity up, may have made individual human lives dramatically worse. Think about it carefully. A hunter-gatherer ate an astonishing variety of food: meat, fish, nuts, roots, fruit, dozens of different wild plants across the year, and rarely faced total starvation, because if one food source failed, 3 others were still on the menu. A farmer did the opposite. A farmer bet the entire survival of the family on just a handful of crops. And if the wheat failed, if the rains didn't come, there was no backup. The evidence appears to be written directly into their bones. When scientists compare the skeletons of early farmers to the hunter-gatherers who came before, a clear and unsettling pattern emerges. The early farmers are often noticeably shorter, and some populations appear to have lost several inches of average height after the switch to agriculture. Their bones show more signs of malnutrition. Their teeth are more worn and more rotted, wrecked by a soft, grain-heavy diet. And they show far more disease. Why more disease? Because for the first time in history, humans were living crammed together in large numbers, alongside their own waste and their newly domesticated animals. Illnesses that need a dense crowd to spread, illnesses that a small wandering band could never sustain, suddenly had a perfect home. Many of the infections that would go on to shape human history are believed to have first leapt into us from the cattle, pigs, and chickens we started living beside. So if farming made people shorter, sicker, and hungrier, here is the obvious question: why on earth did it win? Because farming does one single thing better than any other way of life. It produces staggering amounts of calories per acre. A patch of farmed land can feed many times more people than the same patch of wild land ever could. Farmers had more children, and more of those children survived to have children of their own. It did not matter, in the cold arithmetic of history, that each individual farmer might be a little more miserable. Farming didn't win because it was better for you. It won because it was better at making more of you. And once you have a great many people, packed tightly into one place, and forced to stay in that one place, something entirely new is pulled into existence, whether anyone wants it or not. A city. When you farm, you can no longer wander. Your fields are here. Your stored grain, your entire year of survival, is sitting right here. So you build a permanent shelter, and your neighbors build theirs beside you, until a village thickens into a town, and a town swells into something no human being had ever lived inside before: a dense, crowded, permanent settlement of thousands of strangers. One of the oldest we have ever found is Catalhoyuk, in what is now central Turkey, a town of thousands of people built more than 9,000 years ago. The houses were packed together so tightly that there were no streets at all, not one. People simply walked across the flat rooftops of the entire town and climbed down through holes in the ceilings on wooden ladders into their homes below. And this crowding, this brand new human condition, created problems that wandering bands had never once faced in 300,000 years. When 100 people share a single store of grain, someone has to decide who gets how much. When land can be planted and defended and passed down, people begin to fight over who owns it. And when food can be stored, wealth itself becomes possible for the very first time. Because where grain can be stored, some people will always end up storing more of it than others. Stop and appreciate how radical that is. For hundreds of thousands of years, human bands appear to have been remarkably, almost stubbornly, equal. There were no kings among hunter-gatherers. There were no rich and no poor. And the reason is beautifully simple: there was almost nothing to hoard. You cannot become wealthy when you have to carry everything you own on your own back, on foot, forever. Farming shattered that ancient equality. Stored surplus meant some families had a cushion and others did not. More grain meant more security, and more security meant more power. Power gave rise to leaders, and leaders hardened into chiefs, and chiefs crowned themselves as kings. The deep inequality woven through nearly every society on Earth today may not have been some fixed feature of human nature stamped into us from the beginning. It appears to have been born, quietly, in the granary. And then came perhaps the strangest invention of all. With so much grain to count, so many people to organize, so many debts and trades and taxes to keep straight, ordinary human memory simply wasn't enough anymore. Nobody could hold it all in their head. So around 5,000 years ago, in the crowded city-states of ancient Mesopotamia, people began pressing careful marks into wet clay tablets, just to keep track. And here is the humbling part. The very first writing was not poetry. It was not prayer, or history, or a grand story of gods and heroes. It was receipts. Lists of grain, counts of sheep, records of beer. That dull little accounting system? Invented by tired officials trying not to lose track of the barley, slowly grew into something no other creature that has ever lived on this planet possesses. Writing. The power to freeze a single thought solid and hand it, unchanged, across thousands of years into the mind of a person not yet born. You are catching one of those frozen thoughts at this very second. Cities, kings, inequality, writing. All of it, every piece, came tumbling out of one small, quiet change. Seeds pressed into warm, stable, patient ground at the exact moment the ice finally let go. So look up one more time. Look again at the walls. You are not, it turns out, living the natural and ancient human life. You are living the single strangest chapter of it, a brief, dense, restless 12,000-year experiment that your species stumbled into completely by accident, the moment the glaciers melted and the wild world, for the first time in ages, decided to hold perfectly still. For 300,000 years, home was simply wherever you happened to be standing when the sun went down. And then, in the blink of a geological eye, home became something else entirely. A place with walls. A place you could own. A place you could never truly leave.